There are stories about Palestine and Palestinians that you have never heard of, and they are in these books right here. Most of what we know, it's always coming from the headlines of news.
From the get-go, Palestinians and Arab states were against the creation of the State of Israel.
At the end of the day, this is a group that seeks the destruction of the Jewish race.
And those who seek to use Hamas's violence as justification for violence of their own, we have no tolerance for your hate.
But these books give you the depth, the context, the human experience that the news would not share with you. And after years of reading about the conflict and also hearing about it as a kid, as an Arab living in Yemen, and as a Muslim, I think these 5 books have given me the sort of totality of what it feels like to be a Palestinian in this or under an occupation. Hi friends, my name is Mohammed and I'm a writer, and in this channel we explore tools and habits that help us fit reading and writing into our busy life so that we can write our own stories, stay creative, inspired, and clear-headed. And in this video, I want to talk about the 5 books that have given me the deeper or the deepest understanding of what it feels like to be a Palestinian under occupation. And the last one was written not by a Palestinian. So let's start with the first one. Gaza Writes Back is a short story collection written by young Palestinian writers that wrote it originally in English, so it's not even translated. And I think except 2 stories that were written originally in Arabic, then translated, and the editor is none other than Rifat Al-Arir. And Rifat Al-Arir was a writer, a poet, and a professor who became famous for his poem titled If I Must Die, and regrettably that I only got to know him after his death when Israel killed him. And what makes this book special is its relevance to the time that we are living in right now, or the time that Gaza is living in right now, because it was written after the 2008-2009 attacks on Gaza. So you have these Palestinian young writers who are talking about the loss that they experienced during that attack or during that war. They're talking about their experience of the bombing, of the losing homes, loved ones, and future for some of them. And when you read those stories, the pain that you experience is that how can it even get worse than what they have experienced in 2008, 2009? And then you look at the reality they are living in right now, and it's just mind-boggling that it's way worse today. The other thing that this book also does is that it contradicts the dehumanizing efforts that the major media outlets is doing to young Palestinians, women, men, children, and just innocent people who have nothing to do with this war and who are paying the price with their lives for an occupying power to expand their control. And stories from this book will literally haunt you. They stay with you, they talk to you. Every time you see a post, they remind you of their existence. They remind you of the struggle that Palestinians are going through. And I think the very embarrassing least that we can do is knowing about them, about their stories and what they are going through, as opposed to just knowing them as just numbers, as a toll that keeps increasing day in and day out. The second book is Returning to Haifa by Ghassan Kanafani. And I read this book in Arabic. I downloaded it into my Kindle and just read it. And what it felt like an axe that was digging back into history to show where the epicenter, where everything started. It started in 1948 and the effect of it 20 years later. And this is a story that started in Haifa in the North occupied Palestine. During the 1948 mayhems, there was militias that literally kicked villages outside their homes and just expelled people so that they can make space for the mass migration that was coming from Europe. And if you know anything about the 750,000+ Palestinians that were kicked out of their homes during that period, is that some of them left to Lebanon, some of them left to other neighboring countries, but some of them were expelled and became internal refugees. So they stayed in Palestine, whether in Jerusalem or other neighboring cities. And this particular family did settle in Jerusalem, and 20 years later, they decided to return to Haifa so that they can see where their son is. So imagine this story. This is a family, got expelled, lived for 20 years, had more children, and they had a life of their own, and now returning to see the home that they got kicked out from, and to look for their son. And I promise you, if you read this book, and I know I said this about the earlier book, this one is unforgettable. Because the reframing that this book did for me was, take that number, the 150,000+ people, and make it one, and then tell that particular story. And then you can multiply it by the amount of people that were expelled to around the world. But then when you just take one particular family with one particular struggle, then you see the human behind the story. These are not even the death toll that we are seeing today. Each and every single one of them, these are people that are loved. They had careers. They thought about the future. They wanted good for their children. They had homes. They were paying rent. Some of them were in debt. Some of them were struggling with addiction. Some of them were everything else that makes people human, or that makes us human, they had. And now they are minimized into just a death toll. And that's painful. That pains me. The third book is Palestinian Walks by Raja Shehadeh, and this is a book, so is about Ramallah. And Ramallah is a city in the central of the West Bank, is north of Jerusalem, and more accurately is the administrative capital of the Palestinian Authority, or the government that's supposed to be ruling over Palestinian land. But in reality, it's even in the West Bank is heavily controlled by Israel, is heavily occupied by illegal settlements. Movements is restricted from walking, from checkpoints, and everything else. And this is a book, is a narrative nonfiction that talks about this man, or this author, Raja, who takes walks but is limited, and he sees his city, a city that he has been seeing for the past four decades, closing in. Because before, he used to take walks in certain roads that he no longer can take walks. He used to take walks on hills that are now occupied or has illegal settlements in. And before, it used to be a little bit more peaceful, and now settler can just show up with the rifle and threaten to kill him. So this book focuses on the day-to-day living. So thinking about a 1 mile walk that might take you between 15 and 20 minutes anywhere in the world, in Palestine can take you hours, because the number of checkpoints that you have to go through, the amount of reroutes that you have to take, because certain roads that you have no right as a Palestinian to walk on, because you are Palestinian, you are Arab, and you are born a crime, literally. What's most memorable about this book for me is the reminders that you get as a Palestinian living in under occupation of your place in this hierarchy, that you are a second-class citizen, you are a less than, you have less rights than what you have been born with as a human being. And that's frustrating, it's painful, but it's a daily struggle for every Palestinian that is born in Palestine. And we forget that these people, yes, while Gaza is getting bombed every single day and people are being killed in the hundreds, also people in the West Bank are also going through their own struggles. And the whole system is just geared for them to be eliminated, for them to perish. So when you live under that system, what hope do you have for a better future? And I think that's why I struggle the most with it. I know there's always hope for a better world. And I do think no matter how bad things are, the thing that no one can take away from people is their hope to self-determination, is their hope to live in a place where they are treated as a full human being. And I think we will be at lost once we lose that sense of hope. The fourth book is titled as I Shall Not Hate by Izzeddin Abu al-Aish, and this is a doctor who is from Gaza, also studied in the other occupied territories in Israel, and is someone that has dedicated his life to serving others. I read this book while on vacation, and do not ask me why I was reading this book on vacation, but literally at the end of it, I cried. Maybe it was the first book that I actually had tears in my eyes that rolled down my cheeks after I finished it. Is because the amount of pain that this man had to go through. So this is a doctor who dedicated his life to serving others. He studied in Israel, he studied in Palestine, he went overseas, he did the whole thing. And one day in 2009 attacks on Gaza, an airstrike from Israel killed his 3 daughters. And I honestly do not know how can a man manage to write what he wrote. I mean, it's a story that will turn your world upside down. This is a man who raised 3 daughters and they were killed in an instant. They were just gone. And still, despite all the pain that he went through, his message was, I shall not hate. His message was still to look over the violence, to look over the divisions and see or make an attempt to write a book that helps people to look at Palestinians as people, as human beings, and for him to still look at Israelis and the aggression that Israel is causing still as human. And he thinks and he believes there's hope for peace. And I think this is the most powerful weapon anybody can develop, anybody can carry around, is hoping that things will get better despite the violence despite everything that is happening. Because Jews and Arabs and Muslims and Christians have lived in that place, in that spot, in that area for hundreds of years in peace. They can do it again. And now to the last book, and this is a book that is not written by a Palestinian, is The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And this is someone I love reading. He is the author of Between the World and Me. He is an African-American writer who writes about reparations, about what it feels like to live as a black person in America, and what is the origin of the sort of dehumanization of the struggle of black people in America to also be human, or to feel like human beings amongst the oppressive regime of the oppressive system they have been brought into from Africa. And this one, you couldn't have wished that you've read it sooner, because it just got published and I highly recommend it. In the beginning, I thought he was going to draw a parallel between the black experience, the African-American experience with the Palestinian experience. And although there are similarities, although there are some parallels, he does something above. He takes it a step further, and he actually gives the Palestinian experience its own right. This is someone who used the Jewish experience of reparations from Germany as an argument for a reparation system, or an argument for reparation for black people in America. But this is before he knew the nature of the occupation, until he visited Palestine. And once he visited it, he saw the dehumanization. He saw the two systems that are created for Jewish people and created for Arabs. He saw the two courts. He saw the two roads. He saw the walls. And he saw everything else that makes Palestinians less human on paper and on the ground. And he realized that he made a mistake, and he realized that we are living in a regime that he read about in history, and it still continues today, and most of people ignore it. If you know anything about Ta-Nehisi Coates and his writing, especially from Between the World and Me, which was his most popular book, is that his writing is not only poetic and simple and accessible and beautiful, but it's potent, and it sort of it seeps into the content, and it targets the heart of the problem. I mean, this is a message. If you read Between the World and Me, it was a message or a letter to his son that talks about the father as a black man, and what it feels to be a black person in America, and how his son will be treated when he's growing up in this place. The message is a letter or a message to writers, and how brave they should be, and what is the authority, or what is the responsibility of writers. What is the point of writing? The storytelling is that we have the power to tell our own stories. We have the power to write words, to write story that haunts the reader, so that they can push change. Because he says that stories are the building blocks, are the mental structures that people build their narrative on, so that they can act or justify anything that they do. So if people say Palestinians are less humans, or they are animals, as Israel said in the very beginning of this campaign, then it becomes easier to kill them. It becomes easier to accept that the children heads are blown off, that people are killed in hospitals. Everything can be, the whole strip can be turned to a parking lot. It's easier to do that because now they are less than human. And I highly recommend all of them. Each one of them will change your perspective on the conflict, will deepen your understanding on the conflict in a very different way, from a very different angle. Highly recommend them. You could not miss reading on any of these. I will leave the links to purchase them down in the description, and if you have enjoyed this video, then you will maybe want to know what I'm currently reading, or be up to date on the things that I'm reading, the books I'm reading. Sign up to my newsletter, also the link is below. And if you have enjoyed this video, then you will enjoy my video on the books that I think all Muslims or people who are interested in the Muslim community should read right here. And in the meantime, keep reading, and thank you for watching.